We've heard about them, watched them, and joked with and without them. Who are they? Drag queens. To get nitty-gritty about who the drag queens are, from Britannica in 2025, we can see drag queens are typically men who dress in women's clothing and perform before an audience or are seen in bars and clubs. Drag queens are different from trans because being drag is not sexual, where being trans is. So they're not one or the same or interchangeable terms. The drag culture began in the late 19th century and the early 20th century. That's from Emily Martin in National Geographic 2023. Now, unfortunately, the drag culture is still fighting for their acceptance. In 2022, the USA introduced a more legislative measure that impacts where and when drag can be performed. That's from Scotty Andrew and CNN in 2024. Now, let's dive deeper into who the drag culture is. The drag culture is argued to go back many, many years, but there isn't a definitive time of when the drag culture started. Some historians argue ancient Greek and Roman times is when drag emerged. That's from Martin in 2023. Others argue this culture came to be when Ernest Bolton, an 1860s Victorian, was cross-dressing and referred to as drag. Later in the 19th century, the late 19th century, American William Dorsey Swann was the first self-proclaimed queen of drag and hosted numerous drag balls in Washington, D.C. That's a quote from humanrightscampaign.org. There is no definite answer to when or who the first drag was. What's important to understand as this culture has faced much ridicule like the LGBTQ plus community, or as some do identify with the LGBTQ plus community, drag is a form of art and expression. I'd like to bring this picture back up. It was taken in 2024 by me at the National Museum in London, United Kingdom. It was a newspaper clippings taken from the local newspaper, and it was a sketch about someone that was cross-dressing. That's all the information they gave about this specific clip. While this group of people in this culture is trying to express emotion and messages through drag performances and makeup, they face judgment but also praise. Due to rise in social media and technology, people such as RuPaul and the RuPaul show have gotten more attention and love for the drag culture. While media has made the audience broader and more global, it also brings in an audience of disapproval and thinks that the drag culture needs to be shut down. So with every good, there's also a bad. However, the media has done this to just about every culture, so it's kind of hard to pinpoint it on they're only doing it to this specific culture, because that's what media does best, is pick out the good and the bad and make the audiences. However, as said previously, due to the states with the legislation introduced, the states could impact when and where drags perform. This culture is all about expression, so you can only imagine how this introduction of legislation to the states had them feeling. Drags use constructed gender mixed with comedy and imitation to create a platform allowing creativity, self-expression, and resistance against the societal norms. That's from Doing Drag, written by Daniel Couto Villalobos and Nicoletta Sremic in 2021. Ultimately, the drag culture is connected through testing the limits and norms and being bold in individuality. After learning about a culture, there's always a lesson to take away from it. No matter the culture and no matter the lesson, there always is one. How can we, as society, be better or more understanding? How can we individually be better people? Drag is family, connection, and expression. It's art and being yourself. There's nothing more to learn from this culture other than loving harder. They test limits and express who or what they want to be. Isn't that something we could all stand to do just a little bit more? They haven't ever let anybody knock them down and found strength in the community and speaking up. On a communication approach of how we can integrate some of the drag tactics, they are well educated in their audience, they have much confidence, and they also keep things very professional. Drags know the line between when to put on a show and when not to, as well as who they're putting on a show for. They haven't been this famous for this long without a reason. With that, they are proud of who they are without being afraid to show it. This culture is confident in everything they do, which comes off as attractive, intriguing, and authentic to other audiences. So even if they're doing it intentionally or not, they're persuading other people and other audiences to come be a part of it, because why not be yourself? That's the best person you could be. They use their confidence to be persuasive and get what they're going for. These lessons help us improve our communication by realizing where we fall short and remind us to be confident in our opinion and research and stay true to who we are. To conclude the speech, I just want to say the drag culture isn't one I ever thought I'd speak on, but I'm really glad I was wrong. Through a history of being rejected, the community only grew closer. As someone who lives in Utah, I can't say that I've ever been exposed or around this specific culture. I knew little to nothing about drags going into this, and there was a lot to learn from them. If society could peel back its own skin on how it should be, then maybe we could all learn and grow a little bit more from the drag culture. To be alive is to be art, and that's only what the drag culture is doing.